People are understandably hyped about the forthcoming Galaxy Note 8 and Google's new Pixels, but Android creator Andy Rubin is back with a phone that could steal a lot of attention from those tech titans. The Essential phone, technically known as the PH-1, is an impeccably crafted beauty of a smartphone, and at first glance, it looks like it could be a game changer. I mean, just look at that screen. Rubin himself told reporters that Essential engineers wanted to build the sort of high-end phone they themselves wanted to use, and there's no doubt the PH-1 is a technical marvel, not to mention an incredible first attempt. Just know that it doesn't get everything right. I've already covered a lot of ground in our hands-on video, so I'll try not to be too repetitive. That said, there's a whole lot we need to talk about. First, the Essential phone has been remarkably sturdy so far. I've spent my week with it shoving it into pockets with keys and loading it into a fully loaded backpack, and it still looks like it did when I pulled it out of the box for the first time. I've dropped it a few times too, accidentally of course, and both the ceramic back and titanium frame shrugged it off like nothing happened. It's rare that a phone that I test stays this immaculate for a week of daily drudgery, so credit to Essential for building a remarkably beefy little phone. It's still too bad the PH-1 isn't water resistant though. Essential also gets props for the screen, which, as I'm sure you've noticed, stretches almost completely over the phone's face. I say almost because there's a little notch cut out of the top to accommodate the 8-megapixel front-facing camera. This is one of the biggest changes to smartphone design since hardware makers ditched physical keyboards, and it's still impressive even after the first holy shit moment subsided. Essential should be proud of this technical achievement, but honestly, I don't love the actual LCD panel the company chose. Viewing angles and colors are decently vivid, but the deep, sumptuous colors you'll get on something like a Galaxy S8 are much more alluring. Screen brightness could also be a little better. It's totally readable in broad daylight, but other phones definitely have the edge. It's a bummer, but not every app makes use of all that extra screen space. Apps like the phone dialer and Chrome appear just as boxy as they always did, and so do popular apps like Spotify and Twitter. Spotify actually is a really nice example of another issue some apps have with the Essential screen. For whatever reason, there's a bunch of extra empty space at the top of the app, which pushes everything down a little more than I'm used to. It's not a deal breaker, but it's an annoyance I haven't gotten over yet. Considering how niche the Essential phone is, for now anyway, it's unclear when or if developers will update their apps to play nice with all of this eye-catching screen. Meanwhile, the Essential single speaker mostly just gets the job done. It's a lot louder than I expected, but it's pretty easy to cover up accidentally when you're holding the phone sideways. Still, for podcasts and for music that don't rely heavily on bass, you'll be just fine. Since there's no headphone jack, you'll have to rely on an included USB-C adapter if you don't have a pair of Bluetooth headphones. I've had no complaints with audio quality through the adapter, though it did get an update not long into the review process. I was also a little concerned that such a small earpiece would sound pretty crummy, but everyone I spoke to on the phone came through loud and clear, and no one on the other end had any complaints about my audio quality. Meanwhile, you won't find any real surprises in the software. The PH-1 runs an almost completely clean version of Android 7.1.1, and if you're a Sprint customer, you'll only have two other apps to deal with: My Sprint and Tidal. This is basically nothing at all as far as bloatware goes, so Android purists have reason to be pleased. Beyond that, the real changes are minimal. The standard Android notification bar is thicker than usual because there's a camera stuck in the middle of it, and there's an option to send diagnostics data back to Essential. The biggest change to stock Android, though, is the custom camera app. The Essential uses a 13-megapixel dual camera, and the broad strokes are pretty simple. One of the sensors captures color photo data, and the other captures black and white data. Now, when you combine both of those into one photo, you should get bright colors with plenty of detail, and that was generally the case when there was plenty of light around. Phones like the Galaxy S8 and last year's Pixel consistently churn out better photos, but the Essential was still pretty respectable. Low light performance, however, was pretty lousy. Just days after I received the phone, Essential pushed a software update with a new HDR mode and major performance enhancements for the phone's camera. Just like that, everything changed. I wouldn't say it's a night and day difference because the PH-1 still has a lot of trouble in low light, so you'll find a lot of fuzzy, indistinct edges. Compared to how things used to be, this is a huge improvement. Compared to the rest of this year's flagship smartphones, though, the Essential still kind of disappoints. At least the 8-megapixel front-facing camera works well, selfies were nicely exposed and offered up quite a bit of detail. And for better or worse, shooting with the Essential is dead simple. There's no pro mode here, and the number of settings available to you are minimal. With the original software, there was some noticeable lag when switching between the color and monochrome cameras. Now that lag is still here, but it's less bothersome now. If nothing else, it's reassuring that Essential is crazy fast at pushing out fixes. As I'm writing the words you're hearing now, the company released another update to quash some issues with the camera. I don't expect it to fully solve all of the camera's issues, but we'll continue testing it, and in the meantime, Essential seems to be taking all of our criticism with the right attitude. Meanwhile, performance was exactly what you'd expect out of a modern flagship phone that isn't drowning in bloatware. Everything feels pleasantly smooth, and jumping in and out of multiple apps is a breeze thanks to the 4GB of onboard RAM. Visually intense games like Afterpulse run very well here too, with basically no stuttering or lag. This isn't a surprise since every other flagship phone I've tested this year was capable of the same, but whatever. Speed is speed, and there's plenty of it on offer here. And the battery? Well, that was a pleasant surprise. At first, the phone seemed to struggle with lasting through full workdays, but things have settled into a decently impressive routine. Since then, I've been able to use the Essential phone for a full day without recharging, and it'd usually have about 20% left the following morning when I didn't bother to charge it. You can expect more battery drain in areas where cell coverage isn't great, a problem I've run into with Sprint more so than other carriers. In places where the phone had trouble locking onto a signal, the battery barely lasted for a day. Long story short, most people will be pleased with the phone's power consumption, but folks living out in the country may experience a little more trouble. I had such high hopes for the Essential PH-1, so high, in fact, that it probably could have never met those expectations. Put that aside, though, and you're left with a very, very good phone for product design nuts and Android purists. There's honestly a lot to love about this thing, but a few shortcomings keep it from being the game changer it could have been.